I am back, boys and girls. And today we are going to continue to listen, or I am going to continue to read chapter 4. And yesterday we heard that Karina found two people hiding behind her bedroom wall. And let's continue to find out what is she going to do now, okay? So, chapter 4. Feet pounded up the narrow stairs, and her parents burst into the room. Liebling, what is it? Stop screaming! Her mother wrapped her up in her arms. Karina took a sobbing breath. She didn't even realize she was screaming. She pointed a shaky finger. Back there, back there! Something's back there! Hush, hush, her mother crooned. Karina tried to pull out of her mother's arms. Her father pulled a quick curtain over the window. The room was dark until he lit a couple of candles. Karina scrubbed away the tears on her cheeks, wondering why her father didn't just turn on the overhead light. Monster, Papa! I have monster behind my wall. Her stomach churned with fear. It's not monsters, Liebling, Hiram said softly. He looked at his wife and his shoulders sagged as though he carried some great weight. Those are people back there. A fierce dread washed over her, strangling her. Karina gasped for air. Choose, her mother said, still holding her daughter's shoulders. She gave them a little shake. Did you hear me, Karina? Karina nodded mutely. Tears burned her eyes, and her fingers ached from clenching them so tightly. With a heavy sigh, Hiram gently pulled the skrank away from the wall. The candles flickered with the moment. The wardrobe moved silently. The wardrobe moved silently. Now Karina could see someone had carefully hinged it into the wall on the left side in such a way that the hinges were invisible from anywhere in her room. Only when someone pulled the wardrobe away from the wall were the hinges visible. Also, the hinges held the wardrobe a millimeter off the floor so its legs wouldn't rub noisily on the wooden boards. When her father completely opened up the wardrobe, Karina once again stared at the gaping hole in her bedroom wall. Even knowing it was not monsters hiding in the blackness did nothing to calm her heartbeat. Jews were worse. Karina's mother crouched down next to the opening, which was half as tall as a shoulder-high wardrobe. Karina and her father stood behind her. Sophie, it's okay. This is Karina, my daughter, Frau Rem said gently. A pale face, creased with lines of worry and fatigue, inched into the candlelight. Sophie's thin neck ended in a drab green coat color, which added a green pallor to her skin. Her dark and suspicious eyes stared up at them. She's the Nazi. Her voice came out rough and crumbly, as if she didn't use it much. Ignoring the question, Frau Rim said to Karina, she is Sophie Krugman, and this is her daughter, Rachel, who's 5. Rachel had a mass of curly hair that tumbled to her shoulders. Her wide eyes roamed the room and finally fell on Karina. She smiled. Karina glared at her until the little girl pulled back into the shadows, her smile gone, lips trembling. Sophie hugged her daughter close and kissed the top of her head. When she looked up again, her eyes shone with unshed tears. Are we safe with her knowing we're here? Hiram said, it's too dangerous to move you right now. Maybe in a week or two, but right now? His voice trailed off as he placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Right now, we have no choice. Sophie turned to her young daughter and said, I told you to wait until later. Then she looked at Karina's mother. I told Rachel to wait, but she gets so restless with nothing to do and no one to play with. She likes to walk back and forth, back and forth. So that's what she had heard, Karina thought, staring into the shadows. It had sounded like a trapped animal. Frau Rim smiled with understanding. It's all right, Sophie. So this is the picture of the family. This is See it? So the one on the top, that's Sophie and Rachel. And then these are Karina, the mom, and the dad on the bottom. But now she knows, Sophie said, nodding toward Karina, her voice weary and tinged with fear. She was bound to find out sooner or later, her rim said. Sophie took a deep breath and looked up at Karina. Do you love your parents? She demanded. Startled by the direct question, Karina could only nod her head. Dan, don't report them. I know you hate us. You've learned to hate Jews in school and at your meetings, but don't take it out on your parents. They'll be shot as traitors. Sophie said bluntly, her dark eyes drilling into Karina's light blue ones. That's enough, Sophie, Karina's mother said firmly. Do you need more blankets? Sophie shook her head and moved back into the darkness to join her daughter. Goatee Notch, Karina's father said as he pushed the wardrobe back into place. Good night, Karina's father said as he, or good night, Sophie replied softly before the hole was completely covered up. Karina sat stiffly on the side of her bed. Her mother sat next to her, and her father leaned back against the screen. The candles burned behind him, leaving his face in shadow. Make them leave, Karina cried, a tight ball of anger and fear constricting her throat. Get rid of them. Hiram shook his head. You heard what I said, Karina. It's too dangerous right now. The Gestapo has been searching houses and making many arrests lately. The man who owns the next hiding place the Krugmans are going to thinks it's too risky right now to move them. The Krugmans have to stay. Karina crossed his arms to ward off a chill that left her trembling. How long have they been here? Only a few days. So there were the mouse noises I heard, Karina said through tight lips. Karina stiffened as her mother reached out and patted her back. We felt it was best not to say anything to you. We know how involved you are in your junk model. We thought you might. Her mother paused and looked at her husband. We thought you might not like the idea. But Karina knew what her mother had been about to say. They had thought she might report them for the good of the fatherland, and she should. She had to. For the fatherland, for the Fourier. Sophie's husband and another daughter, Ruth, she's 14, are staying somewhere else. Her father said, leaning forward to brush his fingers across her cheek. Karina ducked as her father's hand and moved stiffly to sit closer to the head of her bed. Why couldn't they all stay in the same place, someplace else? She added vehemently. Her mother sighed. There's barely enough room back there for two of them. Luckily, Rachel is small. Like our place, most hiding places aren't big enough. And are too dangerous, her father added. Her parents moved toward the door. Her father turned around and said, Karina, you mustn't say anything about this to anyone. Many lives are at stake. Do you understand? Karina looked at her hands tightly clasped in her lap. It was her duty as a loyal German to say something. Didn't her parents realize that? Her parents were traitors. Why wouldn't it have been Rita's parents or Eva's parents? Karina, her mother prodded. Karina closed her eyes, trying to ignore them. How could she promise anything? She was so confused. Her parents were harboring Jews right here, right behind her bedroom wall. If she didn't report them, she'd be a traitor too. Karina heard her door close with a quick click as her parents left her room. Lying down on her stomach, she nestled her head in her arms. Her parents were traitors. Traitors were shot. Hmm. So, what do you think Karina will do? Do you think she will report her parents or not? Let's find out tomorrow as I continue reading chapter 5. It's starting to get exciting, boys and girls. I cannot wait to see what will happen next. Until then, so for now, I need you to think about what do you think she'll do? Is she going to report her parents or not?